I am here with Maxine and Daniel, and they are the page owners of Autism Goggles. If you haven't checked it out on Facebook, give them a like. And Daniel is the author of a new children's book called Do You Want to Play? Making Friends with an Autistic Kid. So I'm really excited about that. I got my copy. The illustrations are amazing. And the book is fantastic. I love it. So welcome, the two of you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for inviting us. We were thrilled.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Megan. Great to be with you.
I'm a fangirl, so I'm excited about this. So Daniel, tell me about yourself, and then we'll go to Maxine later. Tell me all the things about you, Daniel.
Sure. Oh, how long have you got? No, I'm just kidding.
All time in the world.
So I am a registered social worker and motivational speaker on the autism spectrum. I live in Ontario, Canada. For the last 15 years, I have spoken about my experiences growing up with autism and how parents can help their autistic kids or teachers can help their autistic students, etc., to live to their strengths and to live the best lives possible.
That's awesome. So where do you work now? Do you work at CAMH? Is that right?
Yes. So I have two positions at the moment. Number one is I am a peer support worker at CAMH, CAMH, which is the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. It's the largest mental health organization in Canada. And I also am a communications coordinator and support group facilitator for Dory Zender and Associates, which is an agency down here that only works with autistic clients.
Very cool. And you have done some speeches, isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right. Done a few of those in my time. In 2016, I did a TED Talk for York University about autism in the employment world and what needs to change. In 2017, I did the keynote for the Centers for Disease Control's annual Autism Awareness Month event in Atlanta. Done a few. I do keynotes. I do workshops. I do all kinds of stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And I obviously I'm here today because I also love to write. This book here has been probably my favorite thing that I've ever worked on. It's also probably the hardest thing I've ever written, even though I've written academic papers dozens of pages long, because it's tricky to get the proper messaging into a few hundred words and into a language that young kids can understand, right? But it's been very gratifying.
That's amazing. Okay, so before we talk about the book, Maxine, tell us about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I want to tell you more about Daniel.
Okay.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I do want to say, because I know you have a lot of professionals on here, that Daniel was very impacted by his autism when he was a young child. And professional projections for him did not align with our understanding of where he wanted to be and what he wanted to do, and our hopes for him. And our hopes for him, obviously, were for him to do what he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to put a pin in that. He's doing very well now because of his determination not to always have to acquiesce to the demands of typical expectations, but to be the best he could be. Anyway, I am also autistic. I work for a nonprofit, large nonprofit autism organization. Co-founded Autism Goggles with Daniel. I'm also a writer and workshop developer. Daniel is a professional writer. He also has an honors degree in communications, but I tend to write the workshops and speeches often, not always, but often, because his interest is really creative writing. He's really excels in that. That's it. So that's really me in a nutshell. I have 4 kids. I'm very passionate about changing understanding of autism and shifting it to a positive place. I thought I might be done when Daniel was all grown up, but I now have at least one of my 11 grandchildren is autistic. One has a formal diagnosis. And so our work is not done. And
she's also still got me to deal with all the time.
Yeah.
Luckily.
Well, Daniel, you are a pleasure, honey. So
it sounds like even more than, I mean, I hear that to the professionals. I hear that message to the professionals, and I say it all the time. Like, parents, you don't have to listen to those projections and I don't know, all of that doom and gloom. You don't have to listen to any of that stuff. Accommodate, and see where they go. Let them lead. Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm sure Daniel will have something more important to say on this than I do, but I feel that we tend to say, I know you're autistic, now don't be. I know you're autistic, now do it the typical non-autistic way.
Yeah, just pretend you're not.
If you want our approval. And although we know it is a social communication difference, that, you know, a huge part of the diagnostic criteria is around social communication. When an autistic person makes a social faux pas, isn't sure how to respond, doesn't respond fast enough, we tend to shame them for that, call them out for it, misunderstand or misinterpret and mischaracterize their behavior. And I think that leads to a lot of problems with, you know, mental health and well-being, right? And also can alienate children from their peers because, you know, people don't understand it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think that also one of the problems is that even people who try to be nice or accommodating or whatever, a lot of them have no expectations for us. They try to be nice to us or like do things for us out of charity, as if we're not capable of contributing something valuable ourselves. So that's one of the things that I really wanted to get across in not just this writing, but in anything that I do.
Right.
That come at it from a strengths-based perspective, and I think everyone will get along great.
Hi, Caroline. Say it louder for the people in the back.
If we come at it from a strengths-based perspective, everyone will get along great.
Daniel, Cindy's asking you a question there.
Oh, here we go. Daniel, how much difference in your mental health that your mom supported you fully and unconditionally?
Oh, I mean, can't quantify that really. I was quite impacted as a kid. I got bullied a lot. There was a lot of difficulties with school administration. Not necessarily because I couldn't do the work, but it wasn't really being presented to me in a way that I needed. And just all throughout the years, Mom's just helped me so much. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't possibly have gotten this far without her.
When you don't traumatize your kids, look at that.
I want to say that...
not too much, anyway.
Right.
People tend to say that if someone has average intelligence or higher and can talk, so a verbal autistic individual, then they're fine. You know, if you are, we abhor functioning labels. So because when you hear high functioning, what the system hears is, we could care less about your needs. And when someone is, again, we abhor functioning labels, what they might call low functioning, what they really mean is, you're a lot of work for us and we can't understand you when you talk or try to communicate. And then they don't care what their strengths are. And so functioning labels are ridiculous. We have known non-speaking individuals who have so much to offer, who are clearly as bright as any other child, any other adult. And so the misunderstanding, again, really impacts how the children feel about themselves. And that's really what it's all about. If we can raise autistic children who believe in themselves, then they can grow up and, well, they're going to grow up anyway, but they can grow up and be happier individuals and, you know, live their lives.
I'm putting this up again. Say it louder for the people in the back.
Well, it's, you know, the school system, Megan, I've said it before, the speed and the volume of the curriculum, right, Daniel, and the sensory and social demands.
Yeah.
Exceed the capacity of many autistic learners to keep up. Our kids are certainly often bright enough to do the work, but it needs to be presented in the way they learn. And though we know our children are unique learners, psychoeducational assessments are not commonly provided. You have to fight for them. And sensory assessments are not just provided. You have to fight for them. And then once you've got them, teachers, though we love teachers, my daughters are both special ed teachers, many teachers don't have the training to know what to do and when and how and what the approach should be. Mm-hmm. And again, in the absence of all that, it snowballs into mental health issues.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to the social piece too. So that's definitely true about the education piece. When it comes to the social side, kids with autism get made fun of, they get bullied, they get outcast, they get friends who, like, at best, people who will be their friend because they're taking pity on them. Like I was saying, a lot of people just don't even have friends when they're kids, and that leads to serious mental health problems when they're adults. Don't know if this is okay to say on here, but when I was doing some research a while ago on mental health and autism, and in adulthood, autistic people have 28 times the likelihood. Autistic people who don't have a intellectual disability have 28 times the likelihood of suicidal ideations compared to typical people, and they follow through on those ideations 9 times the rate. So I think it's so important to get kids when they're young to teach them about the value of social inclusion and diversity and valuing everyone's strengths.
And to me, Daniel, that starts at the top. I mean, it starts with the leadership in the schools. It starts with the training. We did a couple months of diving through a book this summer, and we talked about inclusion a lot. And our autistic children, especially though, well, it's not even especially. There's like one side. It's like the flip of the coin. You know, you have your non-speaking autistic children who are just undervalued. They're not valued. They're stuck in the room over there. You know, their behaviors are just too much to deal with, you know, air quotes all the way. I mean, you know, I'm dealing with this myself. And then you've got the other side of the coin of, you know, this person is this autistic child is just being bad. You know, maybe being aggressive, maybe being attention seeking. So it's, you know, they should be able to do, you know, all of the things the class is doing without accommodations, because they have that high functioning label, which is why the functioning labels are just trash.
Yeah, I mean, it's a spectrum isn't a line. It's a spectrum is not a line. It is a whole, like, think of a color spectrum. That's not a line. Neither is this one. There's issues, there's strengths, there's different things that everyone brings to the table.
Yeah.
Megan, you raise a really important point there. You know, so many professionals think that autism is a behavior diagnosis. But, you know, our sort of mantra is that behavior issues are really lack of understanding issues and lack of appropriate support issues.
Yeah.
You know, anytime I hear that a child is struggling in a classroom, I mean, why is the onus always on the child to, you know, to get it together, to learn how to adjust to the demands of the non-autistic world? I understand that there are some things that benefit us to do, but we can't do what is expected unless we are taught how. And again, the approach right now with our children tends to be to, you know, shame or punish them, or to, you know, just keep repeating what they need to do instead of identifying the gap in skills, providing support and accommodation parallel at the same time that we are teaching them to acquire the skill. But we don't do that. And so autism, which is not a mental health diagnosis
or behavioral diagnosis,
right?
It's a social communication disorder.
Yeah, well, it is definitely a social communication difference, but we have kids that behave in a certain way to cope with the demands that are just not good for them, just not right for them.
The book that we dove into is called Beyond Behaviors by Mona DeLoach. Have you heard that one? It's amazing. I'm just obsessed with the book. But she calls them adaptations, not just coping skills. There was something adaptations that she called them, and basically it was so that they could survive in this world when no one's accommodating them, no one's listening to them. Yeah. Nobody's understanding. Nobody's trying to build trust. They're just like, come on, get it together. If you can't get it together, you're out. So, you know, they develop adaptations to survive in this world. And instead of looking at them as maladaptive, that's what she calls them adaptive. No, that's not. I don't know what she called them.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Maladaptive. That's probably the word that she would use. That she was saying there.
And they're not maladaptive. They are adaptations to help them survive, and they have developed them, and those are their coping skills, and we shouldn't be looking at them as a bad thing. You know.
I'll tell you, as a social worker, I know this, a maladaptive behavior is something that's unhealthy. Like if you're having a problem and so you go drink too much or something like that. Maladaptive behavior is not something you do that slightly annoys somebody else.
But you know, when you see the progress reports and you see like the IEPs, they call behavior maladaptive, and it's not maladaptive. It is what they have. It is what they can do, because you're not listening to them. You're not trying to understand. I don't know. I'm not even talking well today. I know I'm like at 50% today with this mess.
That's okay. There's a lot going on right now.
So Megan, as a parent, it's just so daunting, right? To know that all the time that our children are misunderstood and mischaracterized. Yeah. I forget what my point was going to be. I bet it was really brilliant, and something about executive functioning and not being able to hold a thought in mind. For a minute.
That is probably my biggest thing right now, is my executive functioning and memory. So let's go on to the book. Okay. all
Okay.
the way off track. Okay, let's talk about the book. Daniel's book, Do You Want to Play? Making Friends with an Autistic Kid. Daniel,
Okay.
can you tell me how you came up with the idea for the book? And tell me all of the things about your book.
So this book, I'd like to say I came up with it originally for altruistic reasons, but at first it was an assignment for a children's media program that I was taking part in. But once I started writing it, it just really took on a life of its own. So I was brainstorming with a pal of mine and with mom. How can we tell a story about autism and friendship that no one has really done before? Because all of the children's literature featuring autistic characters that I've read, and I read dozens of picture books about featuring autistic kids, especially about friendship. Uh, they're all done with good intentions. I am not trying to slam anybody here, but they're all pretty problematic in a lot of ways from the ones that I've seen. Um, Either, like I said, it'll show one non-autistic kid just like doing the autistic kid a favor by being their friend, or they'll just come off as very medical and like they're thinly disguised lists of features of autism. Uh, Very rarely was the autistic person treated like their own actual character.
Right.
Um, and so it was really important to me to show a non-autistic kid wanting to find out about this cool new kid. And maybe hoping that they can be friends, but not like demanding or expecting it. And then at the end, we do show that Dylan, my autistic kid in the story, is also just as capable of contributing to a relationship as the main character, Jamie. So, well, should I give a bit of a synopsis?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got Jamie here, who is our precocious young girl who has her favorite yellow truck. I don't know if you can see that. And she really loves to play with her truck, and she meets this new kid at school, Dylan, who just loves to line up his cars. So she's really excited, and she wants to play with this new kid to get to know him and everything. But he doesn't really respond at first when she asks, "Do you want to play?" And she tries several different things. She plays all her favorite games with him. She offers to, but he just keeps on doing
nothing of it.
Yeah, he's not being mean or anything. He's just going on doing his thing. And so if she wants to become his friend and maybe have him want to play with her, she'll maybe have to adapt her thinking a little bit, and maybe try seeing things from a different perspective. So that was something that was really, really important to me to get right. It was a very difficult balance between, you want to show the real lives of an autistic kid, the real way that things are, but you never want to trend into being stereotypical as well. So the tricky balance, but I wanted to show the ways that you can have things in common, even if you're a little different, and the importance of diversity and thinking a little differently sometimes.
I love that Caroline put so much effort into making the friendship happen. It wasn't like, I'm doing him a favor being his friend. She put a lot of effort into like, well, maybe if I do this, he'll want to play. And she didn't get angry. She just kind of was like, well, how else can I do that? And she kind of, she put a lot of thought into it, and I thought that was different from any other books that I've seen. Like you were
Thanks
saying.
very much. Yeah, it took a lot to just a quick point of order. Caroline is the third friend in this
Sorry.
story,
Jamie.
but Jamie, our main character, it was really important to me to get that balance right, because we don't want her to come off as bossy. We don't want the non-autistic reader to think that they just have an entitled right to be friends with this autistic kid. But we do want to teach how to approach. Um, and again, I stress that all autistic people are different, but how you can approach a lot of autistic kids, and possibly socialize. And we also, I just lost my train of thought. We wanted
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Before I forget, can I say something?
Yeah,
You touched on something that was really important. So your book is one autistic kid, right? It's about one autistic kid.
Yes.
And you said, this isn't a book about all autistic kids. It's a book about one. And I think that it's so important for this world to have way more of these books so that we can show thousands of autistic kids, not just one autistic. I think it's so important that this is just one.
Yeah,
what? More of these books.
You know what? The plan, or the hope at least, is to turn it into a series. I am definitely in the prepping stage for at least a second book. The plan is for it to continue following these characters, but we would introduce more as it goes.
Cool.
And yeah, I mean, you're so right. Like, we just in general in the media need more varied representations of autism. You want to know how many times people have asked me if I'm like Rain Man, or if I can count these toothpicks that they toss on the floor. Like, some people can do that, I'll admit, but everyone's so different, and people just jump to these conclusions.
So can we talk about I'm sorry, Daniel.
No, I was just going to say one thing that was important to me writing this book, and I don't think I've actually shown even you this part yet, Megan. Oh wait, you have the book, of course you've seen it. But we have at the end we have these questions and answers for each page that children might have. So that way, we thought it was important for autistic or not autistic, for parents or teachers who are reading this book with some kids, but who might not be too educated on what some of the things mean. We thought it was important to have something to help them with that conversation. And one of the things that we really stress is that everyone with autism, every autistic person is different. They, might like different things, might act in different ways. This is just how Dylan is.
I think that's so important too, to provide a guide for teachers, because you don't want to just send them out there on their own without any type of guidance from an autistic perspective, instead of that medical model of, like, one of the questions is, what is autism and what does autistic mean? You don't just want them coming up with the answer to that. Yeah,
absolutely. Like, and I felt, like one of the questions, like you're saying, it says, what does autism mean? And we say, autism is a word that describes some people and how they interact with the world. We go into more detail, but it says, like, some autistic people speak, some don't. Some don't like loud noises, but others love making a racket. Blah 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 blah. So, yeah, I just thought it was. I just thought it was important to get these messages across. And I should say, this book, by the way, is a collaboration between 3 autism champions. So I, of course, wrote it. My mom here, who, as she said, she's an autism consultant, and she's probably the most honestly most highly regarded one that I know, and I know a few. Um, so I thought we brought her on board, and she provided a fantastic preface for parents and teachers at the beginning as well. And she really helped to make sure that the learning went in an authentic way. And then I do want to give a quick shout out to my incredible illustrator, Nafme Afshinja, who has an autistic son who's very much like Dylan. And you can just see, like, you can see everything just in the eyes and just in Dylan's facial expression, how he's uh, how his averted gaze, he's not quite looking in the eye, but he captures that very authentic look. When I saw these sketches for the first time, I'll show you my favorite one. I think this is Jamie giving her mom a hug. But she wanted to be part of this project as soon as mom showed her the text, and then as soon as she sent me the first early sketches, I was shocked. I was blown away.
You were like, you did it. Yes.
Thank you. Like it brought a tear to my eye because she understood 100% exactly what I was going for.
Can I show you my favorite page?
Okay.
Okay. So this one, and it had, and in the question and answer section, it does have a question about why is one of the pages upside down. And so it shows the little girl looking at Dylan. And then if you flip it upside down, you can see how Dylan sees things. Whoop, there we go.
Yeah, and that was all. I'd love to take credit for that genius move there, but that was all Nabme's idea when she was laying out the page, and I thought that was just brilliant. You know, literally helping the kids to see things from a different perspective. I thought that was just great.
Yeah.
Which is why having someone who loves somebody who's autistic is so helpful in terms of finding the illustrator. I mean, even because it's someone who's looking at the situation, I think that she just brought something to it that we may not have been able to find anywhere else.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely.
They're beautiful. The pictures are beautiful. Can you tell me about the publishing process? This is something I really wanted to talk about after we talked the other day. So tell me about the publishing process. Did you self-publish? Did you get a publisher? Tell me all of those things.
So the way we ended up doing it, well, first of all, we did try to get a publisher on board. We went to a few of them. One of my things is I have difficulty with executive functioning, like a lot of it, honestly. And so I would have liked to send it out to a lot more places, but each different publisher has all these different requirements, all these different ways to send things, all these different methods that you have to do. And so that just honestly, quite openly, got too overwhelming for me, that whole process. So we decided to publish it, to self-publish, and it's available on Amazon in most countries as both an ebook and a soft cover. But we decided to do that, see how well we could make a go of it. We did very little advertising, frankly, and it's doing rather well, I would say. But we just kind of bootlegged it. Bootstrapped it. no, we pirated
both.
I'm just kidding. No stealing here. We bootstrapped it and just kind of figured things out as we've been going. So we put it up on Amazon for pre-order, and it came out at the end of September. We mostly, in terms of marketing it, we mostly just put some posts up on our Facebook page, Autism Goggles, and we did some promotional stuff around there. But then once it came out, we, and by we I mean Mom, started pushing it out to lots of different Facebook pages and professionals who have all gotten given it pretty much universally positive feedback. I'll give you one great testimonial we got from someone who is very high up in the autism community in Canada. Where is it?
In the UK, you mean, Daniel?
No, Dr. Weiss.
Oh, right.
So Dr. Jonathan Weiss, who is the York region, excuse me, the York Research Chair in Autism and Neurodevelopmental Disability and Mental Health, and he's also a associate professor at the Department of Psychology at York University in Toronto. Wow, that was a mouthful. Sorry.
Right.
He said. He said, "Do You Want to Play" is fantastic. The language level, the positivity, the illustrations, the length. The book presents a child-focused way of talking to young children about how to approach, appreciate, and connect with autistic peers. It's a compassionate and playful way of engaging children in conversations about difference, disability, and inclusion. How it wraps up at the end is so full of kindness. I could see my child thinking about different ways of playing. So that was such a high honor. He's one of the most respected names in autism in Canada. He might be I don't know, but and we've also sent it out to we sent it to Dr. Tony Atwood. I'm sure you're familiar, and he is also going to be writing something nice like that for us. But he also very much enjoyed it.
He called it a superb book that he was going to share with teachers and his colleagues. He's going to give us a formal testimonial.
Very nice.
Yeah. So that's been very, very gratifying, and it's honestly things like that just really justify all the couple of years of work that went into this.
Yeah.
Daniel, can I add something about the publishing process, honey?
Yeah.
You say you didn't send out a lot. You sent out a lot. It was a lot of work, and you sent out many of the key places like Jessica Kingsley Publishing, Random House, big ones. And Jessica Kingsley said, we don't do autism children's books. And even though it has the educational component, they really quickly brushed it off.
Yeah,
and Random House still sort of has a pin in it, keeps saying, yeah, maybe.
Well, they said, well, I don't want to talk about any one company specifically, but like some places have said they've all been very supportive. They've all said it's a good book and that they enjoyed it. But the ones that have gotten back to us, they've either said, it's just not the kind of thing we're interested in, or they've said like, we already have one book by an autistic author, basically, so why do we need another, or something like that, even though their other book that they have will be like totally different genre for a totally different age group and different audience. But I think that's part of the reason we need this education, is that people don't know these lessons. People who are not being intentionally ignorant.
If it has the word autism in it, they can check that box no matter what type of book it is, whether it be an ableist kind of hero, like the neurotypical hero of, I forget what they call it. What do they call that when you're like the savior coming in?
Like the white savior, but except for disability.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's that or inspiration porn or something like that. I forget.
Yeah, and I'm sure like other autistic authors also write great things. Don't get me wrong, but like this is very different from anything else that's on the market. I've had it vetted by a lot of people, frankly, who are high up in the industry. I won't go into everybody's names, but everyone said there's really nothing like this. This needs to be published. And all the parents, I should say, they have like parents have said, I cried, my kid cried because they saw someone who really represented them for the first time ever. They said, I'm going to buy this for my classroom. I'm going to get this for my school library. Yeah, but anyhow, sorry, getting back to how the publishing process worked. Sorry, I always get really worked up when
Well, that made me think of something too, Daniel. And it was not the Atwood, maybe it was Atwood, it might have been Weiss, but saying that it helped his child think of other ways to.
Dr. Weiss, yeah.
Okay. And
yeah,
I think that's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, he said I can see my child. Sorry.
Like to switch that mind frame of the neurotypical kids. So this isn't a book that is just like, okay, what is autism, pathologizing all the symptoms, you know, doom and gloom. It's not an inspiration form book. It is a book for neurotypical kids to learn that they can too find unique ways to enter the world of their friends, whether it be an autistic kid or whether it be whoever. I mean, it teaches that at such a young age. I think it's really important.
And you know, it's not like we're like, and the other thing I want to stress is this book also, it doesn't chastise non-autistic people for doing things the wrong way or anything like that.
No.
The one of the mottos that I always live by is, if you want an autistic person to be flexible, you have to be willing to bend. Because so Jamie and Dylan, they're like any good story, they both change by the end a little bit. They both sort of meet in the middle in an organic way, and I'm really happy with how it came together. Yeah.
One of the people commented, ticking the box exercise is exactly what I was thinking. I mean, some of these publishers, I mean, it's not even that they have an autistic author, it's just that they have a book with the word autism in it. And that's like their checkbox.
We obviously really appreciate our allies as long as they're well researched and everything, but there needs to be more representation of autistic people in anything that concerns them. Another thing that I always say is nothing about us without us, which is a common refrain in many disability related communities, which just means that anytime that there's something that's going on that involves us, if it's politics, if it's in the media, if it's all that kind of stuff, we need to have a seat at the table because no one knows us better than us, right?
That's right. Somebody says, I'm going to buy this for my daughter's school.
Well, thank you.
The only one still in mainstream school. I can see how reading this awesome book would help the class be more inclusive of their autistic peers.
Thank you so much.
You know, I'm going to say that, you know, at $1.20 a book, people don't get rich writing children's books. Well, maybe some do.
Well, that's just to clarify, that's how much. It's a $10 book, but that's how much that we get.
Okay. But my point is, there were many days in Daniel's growing up years that were painful because of the lack of social contacts. Not because of autism, but because of feeling so damn lonely and isolated and sometimes rejected. And so he was quite driven and adamant that this was going to be a book about how non-autistic children could potentially could see something modeled in terms of how they could modify their behavior. Them be flexible and think outside of the box.
And by the way, I'm sorry.
Passion project for sure.
Yeah, and by the way, just in case anyone was wondering, the method that she uses to get sort of get his attention and get his comfort is it's a very proven way of interacting, of initiating and interacting with a young child with autism. So we also thought it was very important to get those mechanics accurate. Otherwise, we could have caused some problems.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fantastic. Does anybody else have any questions about that? I'm making sure I go through all the comments. And this was from earlier, but
Are people watching, Megan?
Mm-hmm.
Are people listening?
Yes. I see 6 people are on now, and then there were about 12 earlier. They're coming in and out. People just kind of come in and out.
Alrighty.
Okay.
This person was just commented a couple of seconds ago.
Nothing about us without us, I think.
And then somebody did have another comment, and I skipped over it because we were talking about something else. But this kind of goes like, now I've heard the autism is causing barriers, but no, the school environment is causing barriers. So that's kind of like what you were saying. It's yeah.
See, it's so hypocritical when we say that. We say that the autistic kid has to be willing to change and has to be able to change, but then you got to meet people halfway. The schools are totally, in most cases, unwilling to bend. So yeah, there's mental health problems in a lot of kids with autism, a very high proportion, but they're not a symptom of autism. They're a symptom of a total lack of understanding, like this person is saying.
Right.
Lots of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And also, I think that in many ways, autism is like a different culture. And if someone wants to learn to communicate effectively with the person that they love or support, the more you know about that culture, the more meaningful and effective and accurate the communication is going to be. And I think a lot of times in our school system in particular, I think teaching follows very defined curriculums, and I must deliver this curriculum to you in this way. And our kids can't do that. Some can. I don't want to generalize. For many of our kids, that's difficult because of processing speed, because of, literal interpretation of language, because of anxiety, because of sensory issues. But that culture, that experience is not respected. Again, I know you're autistic, now stop it.
Someone just said, agreed, as a counselor, this is what I see.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know that that you see this kind of thing, and that there are people like you who are, who are open-minded and who want to hopefully help make some change. So that's great.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, if you look at the school environment, I don't know how it is really in Canada, but I'll just say in America, I mean, kindergarten is what first grade used to be. I mean, it's developmentally inappropriate across the board. We're in this huge rush when the kids are young to something, I don't know, make sure they're reading, make sure they're sitting when they're supposed to sit, make sure that they are little adults by the time they're 6 years old, and standing in line straight. It is so developmentally inappropriate for all children.
I could go on all day about my feelings about standardized education.
Oh, let's not even get into that, Daniel.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just wipe them out. Just take them out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Children need to move, and yet we want them to sit in a row,
organically.
To use a literary reference, like Madeline, the little French girl sitting all in a row. The school
straight lines.
seems like it was set up for, compliant little children. And, many kids need to move. And the more anxiety you have, often, not for everyone, but the more, you may feel the need to move, although some people do get inert and can't move at all. But again, that is not supported. It's not respected. And really, quite frankly, many of the accommodations that are provided, it's like, we are doing you a whole favor here.
Yeah.
Right.
And every year you reinvent the wheel and you have to fight for it. And, you know, it takes a little piece of you as an individual and as a parent. And again, it's not the autism. It is the, you know, it feels like, best analogy I ever heard, it feels like you're fighting 40 ninjas constantly. There's always something that, you know, and you're trying to defend your child's right to experience living and life the way that they do. And little tolerance, very little tolerance for it.
Our counselor said, thank you. I'm on a serious mission to do this in counseling. Thank you for what you're doing. It'll make a difference to so many lives, for sure. And another thing about this group, I don't know how long y'all have been in this group, but there are tons of librarians in here, lots of educators, and they maybe aren't, I mean, everybody interacts in a different way, but it's a lot of people that are just absorbing, come in to see what's going on, come in to see, you know, what's being recommended, what's being talked about. And it is making a difference in the library. What is it? The librarian world. It's like a whole different world. So yeah, I think that Own Voices books, which is, I've just learned what Own Voices books are. This is one of them. I mean, they're really taking off, and librarians are actively looking for those books.
And so I always like to keep Daniel busy, and Daniel can do readings for libraries, and Daniel can do readings for your classroom, really anywhere in the world, as long as you have the soft cover there, because although he tried to use his PDF, last time we did that, it didn't work. That's why I asked you earlier, Megan, about the reading, but he'd be happy to do that.
Very cool.
Honestly, it was the most moving thing I think, Daniel, the most moving feedback we got might have been from someone in your group, Megan, who said that their child keeps the book in their bed and wants it read to them every night before they go to bed.
What?
And to me, that just got me. And that's really what it's all about. When Daniel was younger, I was so desperate to find mentors and positive but not inspiration porn things, and there was nothing. And so we want there to be something for these kids. And, you know, I'm so proud of Daniel for doing his part. I know what I wanted to say to you, Megan. As a parent of an autistic child, you know, they think that our children are causing barriers, and our children, you know, this isn't a throwaway phrase, are so brave. Just to get up every damn morning and put one foot in front of the other, when you often go through your day where other people make you feel like a pain in the butt, where other people, you know, with their sighs and their huffs and their puffs, let you know that you are a lot of work for them. So I think our children are actually so brave. And, you know, one day, if you know, Daniel, you ever had the courage to write your story, to me, that is more compelling than anything, because he sits there and he's like, oh, he's got all these degrees, he's doing well. What a journey it has been. Yeah. Right. And I know that journey is echoed by so many of the families that I support. And we, in our group, we have about 20,000 followers as well. We hear these stories every day. Kids who are terrified to go to school and yet get up and go, or love to go to school even though they have no friends. And they are hopeful that every day, this will be the day, this will be the day.
Yeah, we got to change the world for them, don't we? Y'all are doing it.
It's a new version of Manifest Destiny, autism style.
Yeah. I just have to say, like, the response after all that we've said, like the response has been so great, and I think people are starting to open up to this idea of own voices and inclusion and all that kind of stuff. And I'll just say, I was reading how many copies the average self-published book uh, ever sells, and we surpassed that within, like, I don't know, less than a month. So I mean, I think clearly there's a demand for this kind of thing, and I just really want to get this message out there.
You give one piece of advice to the parents of newly diagnosed autistic children, what would it be?
The number one piece of advice that I would give to parents is just, kind of breathe. Your kid is still the same kid that they were before they got that diagnosis. Your kid still has the same strengths they always have. Your kid might have some challenges that some others don't have, but who doesn't? You're going to be fine. Just have an open mind and do what you can.
Thank you, Daniel. Maxine?
You know how you diagnose autistic women, huh? And I'm being facetious here. Because they write really, 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 really long emails, and now I just have to give you one piece of advice. This is so hard.
I know it is hard. It is hard, but you have to only give one. It's the rules, Maxine.
The rules.
Yeah.
My one piece of advice to parents of autistic children is to trust. No, my one piece of advice is to educate yourself, because an educated parent is the most effective tool.
Mm-hmm.
Where should they go for education?
They should read my page and all your books. Well, that is a question I cannot answer simply, because like the internet, it's hard to separate the wheat from the chaff, the crap from the real stuff. Most of what's out there is really pathologized and, negative. So finding actually autistic voices would be really important. There's actually a website or a Facebook page, and a lot of parents go there to ask questions, and they find it really helpful. That's important. And then I won't sneak in part 1A.
You can sneak.
Okay.
If it's 1A and not it's 2.
Okay. The other thing is, if you don't have a psychoeducational assessment and you don't have a sensory assessment, you will not know how your child actually learns, and you won't know how your child actually experiences the physical world. And that is a starting point. And without those, your professionals are just guessing. And guess what? They almost always guess wrong. And when they guess,
where would you get that sensory assessment?
An occupational therapist with expertise in autism, who also has additional qualifications in sensory processing.
That's something that you need to ask the occupational therapist, is if they do have extra training in sensory processing.
They are all allowed to do that, but it's like if you're going to have twins. You and I, we have twins. This is what we do. Right. We're going to go to a high-risk OB or someone who has more specialization, right? We're not going to go to our GP or our family doctor. You want someone who is specialized. You want to do this because 90% or more, according to research, this is what they're coming up with, 90% or more of autistic people have sensory or motor differences that are the cause of behaviors or are contributing to behaviors. The cause of emotional display or contributing. So you must know these things, or we're guessing. And that's just the first step. Then you need professionals who know how to use that information. This is a great platform, Megan.
It's nice.
I mean, there's so many books out there. The one you did on the I don't remember the title, and I just ordered it.
Oh, the neurodiversity reader, the big one.
I mean, I can't wait to get it, and I would have just passed it by.
And we have somebody coming on next week from that book, for another person coming on from that book. All the time Dave Spence is coming next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
See you there.
I'm excited.
It's amazing, really.
Yeah, the book club has been a surprise, really, because it has just taken on a life of its own.
Mm-hmm.
So it has been really nice. It's a nice space. I remember what it was like 4 years ago. I remember when it was like not knowing anything and going down all of the wrong paths. And I say wrong paths, but all of the paths that I wasted time with.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, I'm asking the questions that I want to know. And I know that other parents will want to know the same.
Well, you said to me, how do parents get educated? That's why we developed the workshop that we do, What Doctors Don't Tell You and Teachers Don't Know. And it's, 6 hours of like boot camp. It's just a starting point when parents, they tweak and they go, what? The fact that my child can't fall asleep before 11 o'clock and they're 7 years old might be related to being autistic. The fact that I call my child and it takes them 2 seconds to respond, what? That's related to the autism, and I should stop getting angry and trying to speed them up. It can change things just by having information and having people know what direction to go in.
It's a shame that I only heard the word regulation or the term self-regulation like a year ago. Maybe less than a year ago.
How old are your
That's
son?
a freaking problem, right? Don't give my blood pressure.
The system doesn't know. That's why. System doesn't know.
Well, that's not okay. It's not okay because we have always had the top doctors because they were the preemies. So we've always had the top doctors. We've had great teachers and great principals, and the fact that the inability of my child to regulate himself, that my kid is not my kid is not being bad. My kid is having trouble regulating himself. That's a whole total mind switch.
Right.
And so this year was the first year that in their IEPs, I insisted that they change the language.
Good.
From defiant, from maladaptive. You want to see my chart? I mean, I keep this on my wall. I keep this one on my wall.
Sure.
I hope you can see it.
It's so brilliant.
Yeah, that's so great. You were showing that us that when we spoke previously, and I think that's wonderful.
And it is that mind switch that, no, you're not going to talk about my kid like that. And I think that's where the passion comes in, that, they're talking, I don't know. I want everybody to learn all of the things. That's it. And tell us where to find your boot camp.
Well,
your workshop.
We're not doing it right now because of COVID. Daniel was often hired by one of the largest autism service provider in Ontario to present these full day workshops. And we also put them on ourselves and would rent places and really just charge enough just to cover, because parents raising autistic children often spend to the extent that they can. So, we were just doing a full day for like $20.
So one thing we should just say, sorry, I just don't want to cut you off. I just don't want to forget this. So if you do want to follow us and what's going on with us, and I'm sure we'll make an announcement when we are ready to get back on that horse. If you do want to keep up with us, you can like our page, Autism Goggles on Facebook, so named because we see life through the autism lens. So yeah, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have everybody
Definitely
continue
give them a
communicating
like.
with us.
Definitely.
Megan, do we have time for me to say something about self-regulation?
Absolutely.
Okay. I just want to say that one of the things we know about autism, again, regardless of assessed cognitive ability, because again, just we might assess that somebody's average intelligence or higher and someone else is not, but the one who's not, maybe they just don't know how to assess that. Anyway.
Say that again.
It was just sort of an aside that I keep throwing around people who are cognitively capable, but many individuals are assessed as not cognitively capable. You know, their IQ is below average, but that's because our assessment tools utilize typical communication methods. So that's just sort of
I think the whole IQ test,
it's for
like we could go down a whole nother rabbit hole with assessments. Yeah.
It's another, I think they thought Daniel was MID, mild intellectual delay. And I fought all the way up our Ministry of Education. And so they ended up giving him a psychoeducational assessment in grade 1. They never do that, ever. And he came out in the 99.9 percentile. So they thought that he was mildly intellectually delayed, which is fine if that's what he was. I'm not a denier, but I knew, I had 3 other children, how smart he was, right? Anyway, my point was about self-regulation. Even though our kids can be bright and we know how capable they are in various areas of development, but almost universally, the social emotional area lags behind their biological age. And it can lag behind a lot. And there's not a hard and fast rule, but if you want to use a rule of thumb, I'm going to say a third. So you have a 12-year-old, they might act like an 8-year-old. You have a 9-year-old, they might, have a temper tantrum or cry or not be able to manage themselves like a 6-year-old. That development takes longer and it needs to be taught in a different way. And
it will never get taught if they can't trust anyone around them. I mean, that's the whole thing about being traumatized by teachers and adults who are constantly telling them that they are telling them that they are defiant, getting in trouble all of the time. So it will never, that social and emotional development will never happen if they are continually degraded.
Terrible. Have you ever had anyone on who's written any books about pathological demand avoidance?
No, we haven't actually. I do have at least two books on my list that deals with PDA. And what you're talking about with the social emotional health, the book that I was talking about, Beyond Behaviors, I want you to read it and then you can discuss it with me. You'll love it. I think you'll love it. Caroline said, can we please have Maxine speak in that awesome incubator? I think that would be a fantastic idea. Oh, okay. Let me write that down.
I mean, anyone who can get in there and talk to your audience or your parents and teachers who understand how intolerance of uncertainty informs so much of the behavior our children display. If we can help them know what to expect and have the skill and ability to cope with it, you are not going to see coping behaviors. You are not going to see self-regulating behaviors. Unless they want to do them because it makes them feel better, that's fine too. But that phrase, that intolerance of uncertainty, so many teachers have never been given the opportunity to learn about it. And it's really just a big part, and it's what makes kids say no. They're just protecting themselves. They are just protecting themselves.
I know the word now. It's an adaptive response. That's what she calls it.
Mm-hmm.
An adaptive response. And that's exactly, I never knew that intolerance of uncertainty was a thing.
Yeah, there's all kinds of research now.
But
Yeah.
I wrote it down. But I talk about that with my kids' teachers all the time, right? Because he thinks you're going to kill him. So you need to make sure he knows what your goal is, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so if we're leaving the room, you need to say where we're going and show him what you're going to do. Use the visual. That's why you need to use the visuals. This is with one of my kids, not the other, but like they need to know what the plan is. What's your end game here? And then they'll be like, oh, okay, let's go.
Right.
But if you're getting that resistance, I didn't know this was a thing, but if you're getting that resistance from him, that means he does not trust
right.
that you're not trying to kill him.
Right.
And I'm kind of being silly right now, but that's kind of the thing. I mean, that is the thing with him. Like he needs to know what you want to do, and then so he can kind of agree to it.
You're only being a little silly. His brain is going into fight or flight.
Right.
So his brain thinks there's danger. So this is why. And I mean, that's why I said we know kids are autistic, and that should prompt certain best practice supports, like using visuals to help them understand what's going to happen. And yet they make it seem like it's such a big deal. We don't have the resources. We don't know when to use this. I told him already.
We don't have the time.
Yeah, we don't have the resources. I already told him, but what if your child needs to know the day before or an hour before and needs it presented in a certain way? Not, come on, Johnny, we're going to be going next door in an hour and it's fine over there. That is not like, what does your child need? We tend to call the behaviors that come out of intolerance of uncertainty the rituals, the obsessions, right?
Mm-hmm.
More like rituals. They've got to do things because these help the day to be more predictable and familiar. Well, thank you for taking our mind off of everything else that's going on in the world.
Right? For this brief period of time, I thought nothing of it.
For this brief period of time. Yeah.
You're way better.
Yeah.
That makes two of the three of us.
Well, maybe we'll
No,
build
I'm
it
just kidding.
tomorrow.
I'm kidding.
So, in summary, this is their book. This is Daniel's book, not Maxine's book, but this is Daniel's book.
It's partially her
You want
book.
to play? Tell your librarians that you want them to have this book.
Mm-hmm.
Recommend it to your kids' teachers, or if you're a teacher, recommend it to all of the people. And thank you for coming on.
My pleasure. And I do want to say, so I sent you all the links, but I also included a link to a YouTube reading of the book that I did, if anyone wants to check that out. But yeah, thank you so much for having us, Megan. It's so great to have people like yourself doing this kind of advocacy work.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all. And thank you to all of the book lovers that came in. Even if it was for just a little bit, I appreciate all of your time. And you two stay on while I press end. And we'll meet back in the studio. Hang on just a second. Bye, everyone.